So what I like to call complete co-management exists in the state of Washington in the U.S., in which the treaty tribes, 20 treaty tribes, whose treaties were made in the 1850s, they finally had the rights that were granted them in that treaty recognized. And the courts originally gave them something like 20 or 30% of the catch, and it became obvious that that they were really ending up with 2% of the catch. And so the judge finally in 1974 in the Bolt decision, decided, he was a very conservative judge too, he said, you're never going to get more than 2% of the catch unless you have the right to manage the whole fishery so that it doesn't get intercepted and taken before it gets to your traditional, usual and accustomed places is the term, because each tribe had rights in their particular river and marine area around the river. We're talking about salmon here, which are caught in the marine area but swim up rivers to spawn. And so complete co-management in Washington involved the tribes not only sharing data with the state, with the Department of Fisheries, the State Department of Fisheries, but also analyzing the data. Like they hired a whole bunch of marine biologists who were these wonderful, idealistic young people who just really were out to go. And they analyzed the data, they participated in the harvest plan jointly, and then they protected habitat jointly, and then eventually the tribe sat on the governor's council. They actually made policy above the Department of Fisheries about what is the fishery for, what is our purpose in having a fishery, whom are we trying to serve, who should benefit from the fishery. So that's complete co-management, when you have power not just at the operational level, the technical level, but you have power at the political decision-making level, both in how you do the harvest and in big policy making. So that's complete co-management. And the more complete co-management is, the more powerful and beneficial it's going to be. Well, the other end of the scale, what I would call very incomplete co-management, we have lots of all around the world. And in British Columbia, an example would be when the Department of Fisheries just wants to get some data and they want some help in getting it. And so they ask the local group, which could be an environmental group, or it could be a First Nation, it could be anybody that knows a lot about a local fishery, and they say, well, would you collect data for us in this local bay on this fishery? And then the local group complies and gives them the data, and that's the last they hear of it. It goes into a black box somewhere, and they hear nothing more. Well, you can imagine the long-term impact of that is that they're less eager to give the data the next time. They want to know, they want to have a voice in what you do with the data. They want to know what happens, and they want to know how it's going to influence management. So if you want people's goodwill and compliance and enormous volunteer labor in offering data, like sometimes fishermen get involved, they run their boats, they run their gear, they spend a lot of time, it's actually expensive, they're volunteering a great deal. If you want that to continue, you're going to get that if you actually share a higher level of management activity with them. And co-management can happen progressively. Sometimes it will just be the first two levels for years, and then sometimes government will scratch his head and say, hey, we could actually do better if we did more. And it's enormously beneficial to management to share. It's enormously beneficial to government agencies to share these kinds of activities with local groups because they benefit so much. And in Washington State, the ultimate benefit was when they had arrived at complete co-management. The treaty tribes went before the Washington State legislature and lobbied for a better budget for the Department of Fisheries, saying they're doing important work, they need more money to do it. Another benefit is that when there's a co-manager who has real power and influence in a fishery, they can often access independent funds from NGOs, from foundations, sometimes from another government department. In Washington State, they got it from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and then they got it from the Pacific Salmon Treaty later on when they made a treaty with Canada, which happened after they had done their co-management agreement. They were then in a much stronger position to make a treaty with Canada for very complex reasons, which are probably too long for right now. But basically, you're going to have more money thrown at your fishery and way more capacity, and you're going to have a balancing of more perspectives. You're going to get local perspective and government perspective, and it takes those two perspectives to really get much of a complete picture of what's going on in a fishery.